how fair is it to say that modern philosophy is more sort of concerned with intellectual masturbation than it is teaching people fundamental questions about themselves and the world?
Very fair indeed. I think that philosophy doesn't develop in the way that something like physics does. The idea with something like physics is that you're born into a world with a particular understanding. You develop that understanding. You learn new things. You maybe dig a bit further down into an atom and you find out what it's made of. And then you have children. And you tell those children as a starting point, this is what atoms are made of. And then they're off to the races trying to go even further. Philosophy, I don't think quite works in the same way. You might disagree with this. I don't know. I think it's instead of something which you sort of go from ignorance to knowledge over the course of 20 generations, you go from ignorance to knowledge over the course of one generation, and everybody has to sort of start afresh, which is why you find that these ancient philosophers and early modern philosophers and guaranteed future philosophers too are all essentially saying the same thing. You know, if you read Epicurean philosophy, it's kind of very similar to utilitarianism. It's got a very sort of similar thread. At the very least, it seems to be based on similar intuitions. So you might sort of think that philosophy is a bit stagnant, that it hasn't actually progressed anywhere, but it's maybe not kind of what it's supposed to do. You know, you're supposed to do that throughout your own life. You know, what would it be like not only to have your memory wiped every time you started a new day or conversation, but also to kind of be one thing with many avatars. You know, like ChatGPT is one thing. We're speaking about it as one entity, but you could have a conversation on your phone. I could have a conversation on my phone with it. And it's this sort of one thing, but having two distinct and separable. And I think that a lot of philosophies kind of view human beings in the same way. You know, this is how an ancient Indian philosopher, like who's reading or indeed composing the Upanishads, might think about human consciousness, that it's sort of all one consciousness, that somehow the localizing of individual selves is kind of an illusion, and it's all just sort of one big thing. And we're probably somehow restricted in the sense that we have our like memories and our localized experiences. But if we knew the truth, if we could somehow step outside of that, we'd recognize that we're all actually just one big thing. So I imagine if ChatGPT was conscious, it would probably be a little bit like that. It would be this sort of illusory individuation across different computers and things, which is what a lot of philosophers think is going on in human beings.
It sounds, almost like common sense when you say it out loud, but actually attempting to think in these terms can be incredibly useful. And the other thing that Aristotle that I'm so bullish on with regards to Aristotle is he's got an incredibly well worked out theory of friendship.